we have the ability as people to develop tools that help us with that. And one of those tools is mindfulness. And that is a huge component to what we do at Microcosm, because I'm mindful, and this isn't like a hippie thing, like, ooh, mindful athlete. Like, no, it's a self-aware athlete. It's an athlete who, when something is happening, they step back, evaluate, and respond. They don't react.
Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspects of running and what helps people to achieve success, however they define it, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. We are proud to share that this episode is sponsored by our friends over at Puma. Here at For the Long Run podcast, we're fans of Puma and have been really impressed with their efforts to support and foster the running community. We're excited to partner with a brand that has such a rich history in sports and that cares deeply about the running community. Puma believes that sometimes all it takes is a spark to make a change, to get motivated, or to try something new or hard. And we couldn't agree more. All we need is that small spark, and the actions will follow to get us there. With that small flicker, anything is possible. Puma running shoes offers supreme cushioning, superior propulsion, comfort, and lightweight technology. I've been running in the DV8 Nitro First Mile, and I love how it has a focus on sustainability. The shoe feels amazing, and even better, it's in collaboration with First Mile. It's made from at least 20% recycled material, as First Mile's focus is on cutting down plastic waste in production and in the supply chain by finding innovative ways to get recycled plastic into products like Puma running shoes. Check out a pair for yourself at puma.com and use the code FORTHELONGRUN for 20% off any Puma Run or Train products. When you support Puma, you support me and the rest of the For the Long Run podcast team. Thanks again to Puma for sponsoring us. We're so excited to announce a new partnership with our friends over at SaltStick Electrolytes. SaltStick was founded by a PhD chemist who also just happened to be a professional runner and triathlete. Their products are specifically designed to mirror the electrolyte ratios that you lose in sweat. As many of you know, and I've talked about on this podcast, I'm a salty sweater. That's right, I said it again. I'll say it again, salty sweater. And I need hydration products that help me replenish my salt and all the other goodies that I lose in my sweat. So that's why I'm stoked to work with SaltStick. SaltStick has capsules, drink mix powders, and fast chews. Remember Sweet Tarts? Yeah, fast chews are like that, but for electrolytes. Fun and functional, and that's what we like to see. Head on over to Elite Nutrition to check them out and use code FTLR for 20% off your first order. By supporting SaltStick, you're not only going to step up your hydration game, but you're also supporting the show. That's ALETE nutrition.com and code FTLR. Thank you to Microcosm Coaching for supporting the podcast this month. We're excited to be working with the team at Microcosm Coaching, who are disrupting the never enough culture in running by guiding athletes towards mastery, joy, and independence in the training process. Microcosm Coaching is a human-first coaching organization that knows the best athletes don't go at it alone. That's why Microcosm offers a diverse team of coaches with an expertise in nutrition, mental health, and performance that will help sustain your love for running long-term. Find your community at microcosm-coaching.com and tell them that the team at FTLR sent you. Thank you to the team at Microcosm for their continued support of our show and the greater community. So we're live.
Yeah, we're live.
We've been rolling.
Great.
We had quite an intro here, huh?
Yeah, that was fun.
So the beauty of the in-person podcast is a more enjoyable, like person-to-person experience, but there's quite a lot of technical difficulties that can go on, as you see.
I think you did a good job handling it. Yeah.
We'll see about that, but we hope the audio comes out. And the first question, let's dive right into it.
Okay.
All right. Who is TJ?
Who am I?
Who is TJ?
I'm a multifaceted person. There's different pieces to my identity. I don't think I can sum it up in one word. I'm a growth-oriented kind of person. I think it's probably why I coach. It's probably why I'm an athlete. It's probably why I've done both of those things for a long time. yeah, I don't know. I'm also like a supporter and a helper and yeah, like a pretty quiet and introspective person at times too. I think people who know me know that I kind of like bounce between two different things where it's like, if you get me on the right topic, I'll talk a lot. And then if I'm like, not my topic, I'm going to kind of be more like a listener. And I think, where I'm at right now, fortunately, I get to do a lot of things that really resonate with me. And so I'm able to channel that into helping people and accessing these parts of my identity and who I am really make me feel like who I am. Yeah.
That's a pretty thorough answer there.
Okay.
Sometimes people go, I'm a runner and I like dogs and yeah, let's talk. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And then we have, I love what you said about like on the right topic, you can go for hours. We did that last night.
Right.
What we were talking about and looked down. It was like, wow, I've not, it's 10 o'clock. So for context, TJ and I know each other through Microcosm Coaching, which is a sponsor of this podcast for the month of May and also, I believe, January.
Yep.
And we had a bunch of people sign up for Microcosm Coaching as a result of that first month, which was super cool. I know you through that. We share the same coach, David Roche, and we crewed your partner Zoe together last summer and have had a bunch of fun adventures in Hawaii and all over. So it's fun to have conversations off the record, and we'll see how the conversation on the record goes.
Yeah, we're kind of like new friends that feel like old friends, or you know what I mean? Like we only really met, like I knew who you were and that you had a podcast, and I can't remember if we had run together before Western States last year and supporting Zoe. I can't remember if we'd hung out even, but that was really from there. We've had a lot of really fun and cool interactions, and the trip to Hawaii really, really stands out because I think it really was representative of the community that you're kind of building through the podcast and the community that I'm growing through Microcosm Coaching and Zoe's helping me with as well. And we've got other supporters and people involved in that, but it's cool to explore that with other people. And then, the coolest thing about that trip to Hawaii was like all the impromptu group runs that just kind of happened. They just kind of materialized.
All of a sudden there were 8 people in the run.
Yeah. That was so great. And that run, was it like the day before Kat's wedding or the day after? I can't remember when we did that like long hill climb.
Oh yeah. That was the day awesome. Before. That was the day of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That run was great.
So we started basically at sea level. Well, most of it was sea level, but started at the ocean and just ran up like 3 miles and I don't know, gained like my Strava said 1,100 feet in like the first 4.5 miles on the roads. So your background isn't running. Your background is skiing.
Yeah.
Talk to me about how you found skiing.
I grew up skiing. I started skiing at 4 years old. My dad, he took me out in his old car, his skis, where it was like a 2-door car and the skis were down the middle in the car. Skiers will know what that's all about when you have to like put your skis in the trunk and then they go up into the driver's seat. And we went out. It was kind of like a rainy day and he just like dumped me in ski school so he could hang out with his college buddies or whatever. And I just remember being dragged around by a ski instructor all day, like hanging on to his ski poles. And, that was kind of like my introduction into skiing. And, I still remember that day because I just loved it so much. And so many years later, it's kind of like, oh yeah, like that one vehicle for me, and I consider like skiing a vehicle of self-expression for me. And that thing has brought me to so many, amazing places in my life. And like running is one of those things that skiing gave me.
And it turned out you're pretty good at it.
Yeah, I do all right. I get, I feel like I can have some good days and some flowy days. Yeah.
So you had a pretty strong skiing career and then found running. Talk to me about that evolution.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me. I don't know if the audience will find it interesting, but yeah, I mean, I guess I can say now I'm formerly a professional skier. But I always used running as I started trail running in college, and I ran and trained on roads and treadmills and stuff before that for other sports. And I was a college tennis player. So having a good level of fitness is very important for that sport, but not primarily aerobic. Although the aerobic engine is really important as a tennis player, it's a really explosive sport and it's a different sport. So, but I trained on treadmills, ran, and in college we started training on trail in the off season. Buddies of mine, and we had trail where we went to school, and then the team would go out and we'd run on trail. And our coach was kind of like into it, which was cool. But so I've always kind of been in and out of it as like a training modality for other sports. And with skiing, when I lived in Utah for a couple of years, and that's where I kind of kick-started my ski career. And when I moved to Aspen, everything was farther away. Access to the mountains took a lot longer. You needed to be fitter. You needed a more diverse skill set, all this stuff. And like fitness is a learned skill. It's an acquired skill. So I had to start training in the off season to have the endurance to access the mountains. And that's really when I started to take the deep dive into training methodology and everything, and take, what I learned coaching in other sports and stuff to kind of improve myself as an endurance athlete. And that's kind of when I put on that like endurance athlete cap for the first time. It was a long time ago now, but I remember doing it. I was like, Colorado, you've got you want to go ski really good stuff. You're no longer just a skier. You're an endurance athlete. And that was cool for me.
At what point did you realize like things might be changing with your relationship with athletics and the sport or sports?
Yeah, so for a long time I competed on the free skiing world tour, which it's for people who don't know, it's big mountain skiing. It's essentially a downhill sport. There's no aerobic or endurance element to that. And I started to see, oh, wow, there's like a lot cooler stuff that you can do. There's bigger mountains to check out and areas to explore if you have the fitness for it. And I started to kind of struggle a little on that tour. And I honestly, like, my results weren't that good. And I was training hard and it was really hard on my body. And I started to like get out with the right people in the spring and slowly get indoctrinated more or less into a different facet of skiing, which is ski mountaineering. And it felt like it was more of a natural fit. I was no longer judged on how well I was doing. It was more, everything was a personal choice. The timing, when you want to go is up to you. And it's really conditions dependent. And in competition, the conditions, they don't matter. You go no matter what the conditions are. So the risks can be really high. And I liked that freedom, and those kind of things were a better match for me. And, I can reflect back and see parallels between that and running now, where it's like, yeah, like, you might have a training plan, but, you get to choose how far you go, or you get to choose if you want to do 8 or 10 mile, you get to do things based on how you feel. And it's a more intuitive process rather, when you're going into a competition. And this can be true in running, if you're competing, you don't know what the conditions are going to be on race day. But you're probably not going to get hurt running a trail race. If the weather's bad, you could really get hurt skiing, and worse if the weather's bad. So, like all of that for me was just a better fit over time. I don't think there was like any one pivot point or any day. It's like a lot of small steps that just add up over time.
Totally. I mean, that's the process of how you change to do anything. Speaking of changing to anything, I feel like in future episodes of this podcast, we're going to need to put on some gooders. These lights are bright.
I love it. Being under the bright lights.
We're set up in the For the Long Run studio here in the wonderful place of Boulder, Colorado, and we've got some bright lights, and they're illuminating. So you've shifted your sport, and the shift continues into trail running. You now live in Carbondale. You're out here in Boulder. You're going to Argentina next week. Like, you're in it. You're off the deep end, you could say. Wow.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
I mean, I wore both hats for a long time. I actually, it's long stories, but I feel like I've had so many different iterations of my life up to this point. But I wore both hats for, 3-4 years and was spending my winters skiing every day and doing the pro athlete thing, the photo shoots all the time and the Instagram stuff and, the appearances and going to places on, traveling everywhere. I've gotten to travel all around the world through skiing, which is just great. And many like life-changing experiences there. But I think like the running kind of, again, like a great vehicle for building the fitness that allows you to step out into the mountains and feel really confident. Having that aerobic engine, although the neuromuscular aspect of running and like uphill skiing, they're different. The aerobic engine benefits from both. So it was like a really natural fit to train for both. And I do still ski at a high level, although like I don't get out nearly as much. I just came back 2 weeks ago from a big trip to Chamonix, which has been a place for me I've gotten to wear both hats. I've gone on 4 amazing ski trips there to ski mountaineer. And I've also, now I've, completed CCC and gotten to run there. And that's, really cool. And I think that the two actually complement each other well. But for me, in terms of like really racing and coaching and putting that hat on and allowing the skiing to begin to be less of a priority really happened for me in 2017. And that was because I was previously spending a lot of my North American summers in South America. And I was living off and on in Argentina for 3.5 years. And I would get to ski there. And, that wasn't the primary reason that I was there. The primary reason was that I was dating and then married to a girl who was from Argentina. And, we were living there for a variety of different reasons, visa stuff and family stuff. And I got to experience that culture. And when that relationship ended, there was a new opportunity that came through that, which was to, finally do a first real ultra. And at that point, I'd already done ultras, but they were self-supported and they were just for fun. And so, I wasn't going to South America anymore. Let me run a race. I'm curious about this. I'm curious about focusing on that. And like a lot of people, the community, draws you in and, you get a little hooked on that. But also for me, I have to be honest, like the self-discovery part of it, I really feel like both ski mountaineering and running are a great vehicle for self-discovery. And for me, it's like, who am I? Like what version of myself is going to come out when I'm doing something that feels really difficult or challenging? How will I feel? What kind of emotions will come up? How will it feel to finish these things that I don't know if I can do them or not? And both of those things are really true in both of those sports. But there's something about running. You get to do a lot of it on your own terms, and it's a lot less dangerous than skiing. So, I think I've got to be honest. When I was really in the ski world, my level of risk tolerance was so different. I think people would just think that the things that I was doing were absolutely bizarre. And
they probably were.
Yeah, and so risky. And, I'm such a calculated person, and running was a better fit. It was just a better fit for me because of those things. I really like to take training into consideration and whether I'm ready to level up to a certain distance, a certain goal. Like in skiing, it's once you're in it, Sometimes the safest thing is to keep going. It's to get to the top, not to turn around. And so running is one of those things where you can be really intuitive and thoughtful about it. And I think that was just a great match for me. But yeah.
So speaking of intuitive and thoughtful, I've learned a lot from you and Zoe about running, and it's mostly not physical,
right?
Not the physical aspect of it, but rather the mental, the psychological, the components that go into a happy runner and a happy human and whatnot. We talked for like 3 hours about this last night. It's too bad we didn't record that. That was some good stuff. But maybe you talk about wearing a lot of hats. Put on the purple microcosm hat for a minute as you're currently wearing it. Talking about your approach to fitting running into your life versus fitting life into your running. And I caveat that with a question of, was skiing ever the opposite, where your life was fitting into skiing? And has that influenced your relationship with running and helping your relationship with other runners? A lot of questions in there.
I love it, man. This is the good stuff. Yeah, it's interesting. I do think that, like, as a skier, and specifically as a professional athlete I was really working to make a full-time living out of skiing. And there's a lot of reasons why I'm sitting here today as a full-time coach with a really thriving business.
In a different sport.
Yeah, in a different sport. In that's because it's really hard to make a living as a professional skier. It's a niche industry. There's not a lot of money and opportunity. And with social media and everything, like, the requirements for athletes really have changed. And you do fit, your life becomes consumed by that. There's very few people who are going to be successful in a sport like that who are not fully consumed by it. And the more I discover and learn about who I am, I'm not a singular person like that. And I do what brands ask me to do, and I'll go the extra mile and all of that. But for me, that whole process of working my life around it, led to a lot of debt financially. It led to a lot of, like, insecurity about my health and my well-being. The ask is that you produce things that are really catchy to people and draw in the views and all that. And, like, well, I could die doing this. I literally could die. And I've been in situations where I said, hey, it's been a great life, and I'm really so happy for my experiences. And, if I don't make it, it's okay. And I look back on that and I'm like, I'm not super excited by that kind of stuff, because I've got a lot more to give, and to give it all up for a sport. I mean, literally, it challenges me to even think about it right now. It makes me a little upset to think about that I was putting it on the line like that and barely making it, working in restaurants, working in hotels. And, like, I am where I am today because of all that stuff. And it really affected me in many positive ways too. But it does help me to understand today that, like, pursuing professional athletics is totally a choice. And if you want to do that, work with me. I'll support you. I'll help mentor you. And I've done that for many athletes. But you have to find some balance. You can't give up your whole life for it necessarily. It doesn't work for most people. And I think, we have a lot of research and, there's so much information out there that tells us, what is a gritty person? What is a resilient person? The attributes of those people are actually, thoughtful. They give themselves grace. They know how to step back when they're in a challenge. Then, they've developed these skill sets, and it's not always, like, hard charging, putting in the work all the time. And, like, our culture pushes up against the reality there a lot. And I think that's something that, I dealt with a lot as a professional skier. And then as I kind of made the transition into putting more emphasis and focus on running and seeing how to ignite the joy in that. It was transformative for me on the inside. And that's what's most important. And, of course, my first season of really racing and working with the coach, I had a lot of success, and that was cool. And I was like, I was working with a brand at that time that brought me in for running too, because of that. And, that for me, that gave me an opportunity to stay where I was and to instead of move forward and do the inner work that I'm doing to get to where I am now. And I think it's really interesting to see like how that circle for an athlete can continue in a different discipline. You could be like, well, now I'm doing running and skiing, so my whole life is really it's really revolving around athletics. It's very results oriented. There's maybe not as much balance there as there should be. There's a heck of a lot of expectations, and both me and that brands have, and it's challenging. But I think when you start to make the realization, why do I want these things, and ask yourself the deeper questions, you can start to break that down. And then you're like, what is a fulfilled life? Like, does it revolve around athletics, or is athletics part of life? And that's kind of, to take it back to what you were mentioning before, athletics are a vehicle for you to express yourself, your values, the things that you like, the things that you don't like. Like it's an avenue or a vehicle for expression. It can't be all consuming. I mean, it is for some people, and that's okay. But I think that the pitfalls in that is those people often have pretty big reckoning moments at certain stages of the process. And so with the athletes that I work with, and, a big cornerstone of our philosophy at Microcosm Coaching is working to access that vehicle for expression and let it be a vehicle of expression for you, and not something that you're all consumed by. Because when you're all consumed by something, it's actually, the research suggests that you're less likely to achieve your full potential and your goals.
If you've been enjoying this podcast and can spare 90 seconds of your time today, can you do me a favor? Can you pop over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review? It helps other people find and enjoy the podcast too. Thanks so much. This episode of For the Long Run podcast is sponsored by Puma. For 75 years, Puma has been pushing sports and culture forward with innovative design and development. We are honored to have Puma supporting this show and supporting the running community at large. My greatest compliment for running shoe is, I didn't think about it once. The purpose of having the right gear is to enable you to do anything you want out there. When I'm running in Puma's Deviate Nitro First Mile, all I'm thinking about is literally anything else. I think about the community, I think about why trying hard things is so rewarding, I think about how cute Alfie is, and I think about how much I love tacos, and I think about the big things like how I want to leave each place I inhabit better than I found it. You know what I'm not thinking about? What's on my feet. And that's the best thing about Puma running shoes. They're designed to help you get out there effortlessly, so you don't have to worry about what's on your feet. Just need to worry about putting one foot in front of the other. Check out a pair for yourself at puma.com and use the code FORTHELONGRUN, all one word, for 20% off. Again, when you support Puma, you're supporting me and the rest of the podcast team. Thanks again to Puma for supporting us. Thank you to Salt Stick for sponsoring this episode of For the Long Run podcast. If you deal with muscle cramps, fatigue, or just general dehydration, check out Salt Stick's suite of products to help you replenish what you lose in your sweat during those long workouts on the road or on the trail. Whether you're a fan of capsules, powders, or chewables, you'll find awesome flavors and plenty of hydration with Salt Stick. And remember, friends who hydrate and replenish electrolytes stay together. And that's what this podcast is all about. We're stoked to be partnered with a company that's backed by science and helps us stay hydrated and healthy for the long run. So head on over to aletenutrition.com to check them out and use code FTLR for 20% off your first order. Thanks again to Salt Stick for supporting the show. Here at the For the Long Run podcast, we believe that inspired athletes are unstoppable. That's why we're excited to be working with the team at Microcosm Coaching. We're disrupting the never enough culture in running by guiding athletes towards mastery, joy, and independence in the training process. Microcosm Coaching is a human-first coaching organization that knows that the best athletes don't go at it alone. That's why Microcosm offers a diverse team of coaches with an expertise in nutrition, mental health, and performance that will help you sustain your love for running long term. The Microcosm coaches and community of like-minded athletes will encourage you, strengthen your commitment, and support accountability towards your highest goals. Through breakthroughs, setbacks, and plateaus, your coach and community will guide you through the ups and downs inherent in an athletic life. Find your community at microcosm-coaching.com and tell them that the team at FTLR sent you. Thank you to the team at Microcosm for their continued support of our show and our greater running community. Yes. There's a lot to unpack there. I'm just like nodding my head along here because I've like gone way off the deep end. When I got into running, it was like all running all the time. And this was like 2013. I was in a group called November Project. It was like, oh, you're doing this? Oh, well, I'm doing this plus 10. Oh, I'm doing this. You're doing this marathon? Oh, I'm doing this marathon. Oh, I signed up for a marathon. Oh, cool. Oh, my first, just like more. And it got me after a couple of years of being inactive to becoming active again. So that was great. But it was this like cycle of more. But I still like the people I connected with at the time were super into running, but it wasn't everything for them. And I took it further.
Sure.
And like then it became everything for me to a fault, I think. And I'm just now like ebbing or flowing back from that. And it's definitely been like, you know, a roller coaster along the way. But I feel like I'm in a place today, again, thanks to a lot of the guidance that you and Zoe and Kate and David have provided, just like understanding how to insert running back in, right? I can't remember if I've shared it on the podcast, but I've taken a step back from running. I took a week off and then like 6 or 7 weeks of unstructured training. And part of it is like, I'm a guy with a running podcast. I live in Boulder and I work at a company where a lot of people use our program to help with their endurance pursuits. Not everyone, plenty of people that use it for just regular health reasons, but like it permeates my life. And so I've always been afraid of like, what happens if I don't run for a month? Like, is it all still relevant? Is it all still whatever? I listened to Finn Melanson on his podcast talk about how his relationship with running right now is like he uses running to figure out things and he goes on a run to think about stuff. And he's a quick dude, you know, not winning most races, but he could, you know, go out and win a race, but that's not what he's doing it for. He's doing it for the troubleshooting, the mental clarity and whatnot, and letting it give more than it takes. And so I got to this point where it was taking more than it was giving. And so I'm out here trying to figure out how do I insert it back in a way that allows me to go run 30 miles with friends this summer, but also not take over my life as it may have in the past. And so I find your approach with it to be fascinating, where you ran 20 miles this morning, you're going to run 10 to 14 tomorrow, and then you're flying to Argentina in 2 weeks to go run a trail race down there. You seem to have a very strong relationship with running, but also a healthy relationship with running. First, is that true? And second, like, how did you get there?
Well, I think through the same process that you're going through right now. And I just, you know, want to acknowledge the insight that you brought, you know, me and the listeners there by talking a little bit about your journey and what you're experiencing. And kind of what I'm hearing is, you know, you reached like a reckoning moment, more or less. And you might not describe it in those terms, but it's normal. And I want to normalize that because it's really normal for high achieving people. And you're one of those people. It's really normal for you to continue to level up all the time. And you describe it as more, even though not everyone around you is doing that. But I think sometimes what happens when you're on the road to more is you're not maybe spending the time recognizing the passion the joy and celebrating those things quite as much as you are focused on the more and the more and the what's next. And that progression is so normal for people. And I think the stage that you're at is something that, I've dealt with for sure. Like I mentioned, the first year I was working with a coach, I had success. I did well at races. That was awesome. And then I put expectations on myself for the second, my second season of really competing. And then I had sponsorship obligations too. And they, there's pressure. And so I did not do as well that season, even though the body of work was there.
Right.
The training was there. All of it was there, but the mental components weren't there. And so that's, and you have to, as an athlete, be open to, and a person, really, this comes down to a human level, which is the amazing thing about athletics, is allows us to use a vehicle then that can expand out into the rest of your life. You have to sit back and ask yourself some of those questions that, you were asking me. And how did I get there? Well, I got there through trials and adversity and challenges, and not liking how I was feeling and being disappointed and being upset and frustrated. And, that's the good shit. Honestly, I hope I can say shit on this podcast, but that's the good shit. And if you're a person who's not experienced that, set a bigger goal. Go for something that feels uncomfortable, that feels scary. And you will start to have more of those moments. And those are the moments that offer you an opportunity to level up. And it's not to level up in physiology. It's not to level up athletically. It's to level up inside. And that's really what's most important. And I think that when you do that inner work, and it's not a linear process, you might have one race where you get it and another race where you don't. One training run where you get it and another you don't, just like anything else. But you eventually rewire the neural pathways in the old ways that you thought about things, and you introduce new ideas, and you surround yourself with different people, and there you are. And like, I think when I reflect on like the last couple of years of training, and they definitely haven't been for me great. Like, I lost a sponsorship that was a 7-year long relationship at a time when I was really sick and feeling down about my training and performance. And, that's the good shit, honestly. Like, that's the stuff that you want to have happen to you, because that's what creates growth. And it's hard. You don't love it when it's happening. You don't like get up every morning with a cup of coffee like, hell yeah, I love how I'm feeling.
I love the struggle. It's like the struggle porn on Instagram.
It's not like, I don't want to like glorify that, but I want to normalize that. Like, if you're a forward moving person, you're going to experience that all the time. You're going to experience that more than you experience success, and you're going to grow. Your perspectives are going to change. You're going to broaden your horizons, like all of this great stuff. And then, you're going to have setbacks, and they don't quite feel like it anymore. They feel different. You're going to have performances, and hey, they feel different. You're going to have great runs, and they're just not, you're going to feel different about those things. And for me, that expresses itself as having athletic be a healthier part of my identity. And it gives me important insights that I can then share with my athletes and friends. And, that's really for me, what helps me move through that kind of stuff is like, wow, like, look at how cool this is now. And that was really hard, but now, right. Like, I can go to Argentina and I can put in a lot of training, and hey, if the race doesn't happen or sprain my ankle, I took a huge fall today. Like, for a second I was like, could be it. Maybe I'm not going to make it to the race. Like, but that's okay. It's only a race, and there will be a lot of other races. Fortunately, I didn't get hurt, but we did try to compete, Zoe and I, at the Marin Ultra Challenge in, I think it was like March. And we trained a lot this winter, and it was a hard winter to train in Colorado. But
all the people in the East Coast are like, yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, we flew out there, and, we committed to it, both in training, financial commitments, time commitments. And, we were 15 minutes in the rental car and they canceled the race. And, it was like neither of us we were like bummed for like a second. And then we were like, well, shoot, we get to like go run around the city. We can go to museums. We can, do different things this weekend. Awesome opportunity. And had like one of the best weekends we've had. We've had a few of those this year, which is really great. Like in Hawaii and stuff, which is another just like totally messed up, imperfect place to try to train. And it ended up being like one of the most fun weeks ever. And so it really depends, like the growth happens inside. How tightly do you want to hold on to these things? And that's a muscle that you can grow. And you're doing that right now, which is really cool. And I think it's important to recognize, like, you asked yourself questions. How do I have a healthier relationship with this? How do I make it more about fun and joy? And, I was heavily influenced by David with regard to those things. I mean, his influence really changed my perspective because as a high achieving person, as an athlete, I fell into a lot of the normal traps that people fall into, which is like more is better, going really hard, even when you're, tired, putting forth 110% effort all the time, beating yourself up, holding yourself to unrealistic expectations, high expectations, like all these things. And like, that's how you achieve. Right. And like you learn over time. And fortunately for everyone else who's coming up, there's so much research on this now. There was no research on this when I was a kid, but there is now. Those are not the ingredients to success. In my athletes, some of them cringe, I'm sure, when they get my feedback. It's like, don't be so hard on yourself. Celebrate something small, whatever it is. Why did you choose this race if it's not fun to train for it? Like all of these things that feel like you laughed, but, people choose specific goals for reasons that you meant, like you kind of like alluded to a little while ago. Well, how do I level up? How do I what's more? More is I ran a 20 miler for the first time this year, and I'm also going to do 100 miles. And that's something that like I see all the time as a coach. And that is a product of our culture in the US. That's something that can be changed.
You're saying you ran 20 miles today and you're also training for 100 miler.
Oh, sorry. No, I'm saying I've had,
true, though.
Right. But I've been running consistently for 10 years to get to the start of this 100 miler. And I had been running and training in other sports for my whole life. But I've worked with dozens and dozens of athletes who have just started running and their goal is to run 100 miles. And that's the product of our culture that says you're not a good enough runner if you can't run 100.
Well, that's why I ran my first marathon, because everyone else was doing it.
Right. Totally. And like, what would maybe, I don't know, but it didn't burn you out. It
I loved
fueled your fire, which is cool.
Yeah, no, I loved it. I was also a very resilient 23-year-old at the time.
Yeah.
The summary of like everything you just said is basically like, it's not about avoiding the waves, it's learning to surf, and insert Hawaii reference there. I don't remember where I heard that, but
I like it.
Someone else said to me, it was Kelly Vaughn, who I did a podcast with on Friday afternoon. And she is a high-performing entrepreneur. She's founded or co-founded a couple of businesses and been really successful in that regard, and is training for running for the first time in her life. And she wants to do a marathon. And she's also, her educational background is psychotherapy and psychology and public health. And so she understands like the mental aspect of motivation and where it comes from and what happens in challenging times. And her point was basically like, it was something around, I don't want to botch it because it was like so poignant, but it was basically like, it's not about what happens to you, it's about how you respond to it that matters. And I think that's so important to highlight, right? Like we all have things that are happening or responding to running in different ways. And like the easy thing would have been, oh, stop running entirely and just pick a different sport. And there's nothing wrong with that if you choose that.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with someone that was like, I just wanted to be bad at something again. So she picked a new sport and got into cycling or whatever it was. And there's certainly merit in that. But it's so interesting how we all respond to things differently. And then this like hustle culture of do more, do more, do more. Like I'm so guilty of being a part of this.
Yeah.
And perpetuating it. Like in 2020, I started a newsletter, like did all these things because I just like, I wanted to do more. I didn't think I was doing enough, or I was bored because of the pandemic or whatever. But it's just fascinating how the brain works and how certain people are just not satisfied with status quo, myself being one of them.
Totally. And it's really, when you look at it, it's maladaptation. Genetically, we came from times a long, long time ago when, a lot of this stuff was in serious scarcity, and now everything is at our fingertips. And so we can hit ourselves with dopamine all day long and it feels good. And so we do more and more and more. And it's very normal, but it's not advantageous. It's something that we have to break down and develop tools to be able to deal with. Cause like we're all guilty of that. I try to be really transparent with, my friends, even my athletes. Like I've had huge struggles with that as a business owner. I had no issues with that when I worked for other people. I had no issues with boundaries. I had no issues with clear communication and clear ways of setting those boundaries, clear agreements. I had no issues with those before I started my own business. And like the cool thing about life is like life will always send you a message that you don't have a grasp on this. and so like it's your opportunity to build awareness and to respond to that. And, I think you mentioned before, we all have also, very unique histories. And so like there are blocks that develop, and there's trauma and very real stuff that happens to people over the course of their lives that make some of these things more difficult, that might make you more susceptible to, more, like some coaches call that like the lily pad approach, where it's like before I've even digested accomplishing a goal, I've already planned the next one. Or it's like before I even got to that start line, I see this the week before I'm planning another race. And, that's a product of culture. That's a product of the way that our brains function. And we have the ability as people to develop tools that help us with that. And one of those tools is mindfulness. And that is a huge component to what we do at Microcosm, because I'm mindful, and this isn't like a hippie thing, like, oh, mindful athlete. Like, no, it's a self-aware athlete. It's an athlete who, when something is happening, they step back, evaluate, and respond. They don't react. And developing that type of tool set and ability, it takes time. It takes messing that up a lot and doing it right sometimes. But when you begin to respond to certain stimulus, certain challenges, certain things that happen, you then can mount a much better response. And I think that, for athletes, this is something that is hugely important, especially in the sport of running, where we have impact forces. There's no other sport really like running, where you're just pounding the ground all the time. And the breakdown that happens there, if you don't listen to your body, if you overdo things, if you're involved in that more, it's really easy to get hurt. A lot easier than other endurance sports. So developing those skills and that tool set is going to help an athlete make better choices over time. And ultimately, like, you have a lot of people will have a coach in running, and hopefully their coach helps to validate when they've responded and invalidates when they don't and helps them build awareness around it so they can become better decision makers and more independent athletes.
I love that. I saw a statistic that was like, I don't remember what the actual number was. It was like 5 or 10. Okay, cool. The GoPro has decided that it's going to shut it down for the day. It's had enough running.
Battery.
It's had enough podcasting. Our Sony camera is still rolling, I believe. I think the lens is open. TJ is refueling here.
I just need a sip of water.
The joys of technology. Anyway, the statistic was something like 5 to 10% of runners have a coach. So
Right.
It's like we live in these worlds where we think everyone is coached, or maybe you don't, but I thought that. And it's fascinating that the majority of people are not coached. I couldn't imagine going through this running journey without like a beacon of knowledge helping to illuminate the way. And I've had a coach basically my entire running career. After a few months, I just kept getting injured. And Steven Stam, a guy on that I had connected with on Twitter, like DM'd me and was like, "Hey, I can help you stop getting injured all the time." And so I ran my first marathon with his coaching and PR'd my 5K a million times. And I can't imagine this journey without a coach. So let's say someone's listening and they're like, "Wow, TJ sounds awesome. What's this microcosm logo is super cool." And they're curious, but they're like, "But I'm not a serious runner." What do you say to someone who's like thinking about coaching, but has reservations because maybe they don't think they're good enough for that? These are the hesitations that I've often heard. What do you say to that person?
I mean, I think I want to say a couple things to that person. Honestly, one, I want to say everyone at every level deserves to have a coach. I mean, fundamentally, I founded my business on that idea. I think coaching should be accessible, and it should be for everyone because it's not, running is a vehicle for expression, and it's not, you're expressing yourself at every level of the sport. I go through things as an elite athlete that runners who are on a run walk will still feel. I feel the heat. I feel the hills. Like that, none of that ever changes. And so our perceptions of who we are really matters. And I would want to unpack that with, a person who feels like and I get that. I get that sometimes. I'll hop on a call with a prospective athlete, never met them before in my life. I've read through a questionnaire and gotten a glimpse. And the questionnaire, they often was like, "I'm not really an athlete. I don't really identify as a runner. I don't call myself a runner." Well, why are you here? And we have that question on there. What are you hoping to get out of this relationship? What are your expectations of your coach? We have a lot of questions on there that I think are really insightful, but it's really interesting when an athlete just straight up says, and I call them, I'm saying they're an athlete. You're looking for coaching. There's a part of you who's seeking improvement, growth. And when you say, "I'm not really an athlete, I'm not really a runner," you're telling me something about your psychology. You're challenged by your identity, the way you view yourself. And we need to unpack that and bring the athlete in you out, because you are an athlete. Like, you're expressing to me that you want to grow, that you want to train, that you want to be involved in a process of growth over time. That's an athlete. That's an athlete to me. And so people often are locked into like a small vision syndrome, more or less. Like, I don't know if I want to like embrace that. And some of that can often be rooted in failure, like fear of failure, being scared of failing. Scared of, maybe this isn't going to look the way that I thought it would look. Maybe it's going to take a different amount of time than I thought it would take. And there's a resilient person within you, whether you know it or not. You're probably resilient in many ways in other parts of your life that then we're going to channel into the athlete you and let that come forth so you can accomplish an athletic goal.
I love that. I feel like we could go for hours on this. I believe it's about dinner time.
Sure.
So maybe we'll wrap for today and go another round at some point soon. But TJ, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat. If we want to learn more about you or your coaching, where can we find you?
Microcosm Coaching on the Instagram and microcosm-coaching.com.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you out there.
Totally. Oh yeah. Thanks.
That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next time on For the Long Run. And in the meantime, happy trails. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too. This podcast and the accompanying music has been produced by Brian Walters of Single Track Sound. For the Long Run's logo was created by Vanessa Wolf of Sterling Wolf. Show notes have been written by Ruby Wiles and is managed by Emily Holland. It takes a village.